Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 67.
We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldeman Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land. It's another week of Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm John Webster, and I'm here with Isabelle Sinclair.
Hi, everyone.
So, Isabelle, what's on your mind today?
I would like to talk about traveling and how it could apply in real-life circumstances once you get back home.
Well, I'm glad you'd like to talk about that because we've had several travel series. So we've had a Sammy travel series, and she's talked about stuff. We're doing an Elise travel series. And in 2023, we're going to have a lot of episodes about her travels in India. And I'm convinced that travel is associated with wellness.
Yes.
But I've had a hard time placing it in my 8 categories that I talk about. And so I'm glad to talk. You have some ideas on how you see it connecting to wellness. So it's a great topic. Setting aside that, I don't want you to feel like you're pigeonholed in terms of connecting it to wellness, but what do you like about travel and what do you think it does?
Yeah, I love traveling because I feel like it forces you to get put outside the box and figuring yourself out, how to navigate new cultures, a new continent, just navigating unfamiliar circumstances. I feel like it builds resiliency and it kind of stems from intellectual wellness, I would say. It makes you really think for what you need to get to. This past summer, I've actually been to Italy and I don't speak Italian. I didn't know how to navigate anything. Italy is a very walkable country. It's kind of hard to get an Uber. So you kind of you're just thrown into that country and you have to figure it out for yourself, fend for yourself, which I think made me more resilient. So I would definitely suggest trying new things and just making yourself uncomfortable to become comfortable in those situations.
The thing about differences too, there's so many neat things about that. So first of all, it's just really cool to see people doing things in a different way or being in a different place, because especially for people like me who grew up kind of in one place, I have lived in many places, but I lived in the Waterloo region for most of my life until I left partway through university. And it was only then I started to see things that are different, right? And so on one hand, you're like, wow, it's so cool to see. But the other thing I love about it is it makes me appreciate what I have here. Mm-hmm. It makes me appreciate what's kind of unique to where I grew up and what's cool about it. And that process made me start, when I travel, I often think, what's cool about this place? Mm-hmm. And I try and zero in on some of that stuff. And it makes me just look around the world and wonder. There's so many amazing things around us.
For sure. I would say definitely, I agree with your statement. One thing that really drives me to travel is how am I going to know how things run differently somewhere else if I never go? I'm someone that needs to see it for myself and experience it. And I'm definitely very grateful to be Canadian, and being Canadian has so many perks and privilege. We're such a great country and we're free, but I think it's definitely really important to learn from different cultures and go explore the world. We have one life, and I think it's just so important to see how people do things differently and trying to find common humanity, no matter where you're placed in the world. I think really ties everyone together, no matter your ethnicity, race, culture, country, and so forth.
When you travel, I do like to see the differences, but I do look for the commonalities too. I like the thought of, too many times people want to think about how we're also different. Mm-hmm. They want to be, I'm unique, I'm special, I'm different. Yeah. Where I like to look at where we're the same. So I do love that aspect of travel too.
Yeah, for sure. I especially think that in this climate of our society, there's so many things that could drive us apart, but trying to just find common ground between two people that don't really see eye to eye is very important in both the workplace and your interpersonal relationships as well. Just trying to find a way to connect despite so many differences.
I know right now I have this kind of pipe dream that right now with all the kind of the right and the left and everyone's so polarized, I have this idea that I could interview people from each side. And I have this idea of the interview questions I would ask them. And I expect they would answer almost the same to these questions. So it'd be kind of cool to superimpose that. Mm-hmm, for sure. I believe in this and I don't agree with anything they say. And then I would have a series of 10 or 20 questions where they give the exact same answer. Yeah. But I'm not going to do that, but it's just kind of this pipe dream that I have. The other area where it ties in for me actually is in terms of physical wellness, because to me, eating is really important. Mm-hmm. have tried to eat less food now to try and maintain a better weight. And I try and eat natural food as opposed to processed food. So flavors are really interesting. And so as an example, we traveled to Mexico several times. They have some amazing food, and it's not the stuff that you think of in kind of like the Tex-Mex roadhouses. It's things made with cumin and all these different flavors and refried beans and lots of onions and garlic. This really cool way to make it. And so when I got home, I taught myself how to make some of this stuff. So it's a part of my kind of regular routine to have this delicious Mexican food.
Yeah, I love that. And I kind of have a similar story. So one of my favorite foods is Italian. I love pasta. Anything related to Italian food is just divine, in my opinion. But I'm also someone that kind of is gluten intolerant. So when I went to Italy, all I ate was pasta or pizza, but I noticed that I didn't really have any stomach issues there. So like the ingredients that are used, I feel like benefit physical wellness. Like there's less bloating when you go abroad. There's a really big emphasis on which ingredients are used. They only expect excellency in their food. And I think that's a really big part of their culture. Like food brings people together. And I love how you said that you brought a little bit of Mexico back home to you. I think that's so interesting how despite you, I'm assuming, not being Spanish, you still appreciate a part of their culture and you integrate it into your own. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. A couple points. We often say in the show, and I'm going to repeat, we're not experts here. I don't know this.
Yeah.
So I'm just telling you something I heard. I hope it's true. But I had a friend who's gluten intolerant, so can't eat bread. He went to Spain and was able to eat bread in Spain. And he told me that there's a difference between the flour. There's some difference between the flour. So it makes me think that if you are intolerant, that there might be some way to explore whether some flours from other places use a different technique that might open things up for you.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing I brought back is we went to Ireland.
Ooh.
And we were in this amazing little restaurant in this small town that we stayed close to. And they made us a Guinness Irish stew.
Ooh.
It was so good. So I came home and I tried all these different recipes. So I've now got an amazing Guinness Irish stew recipe. And I just love that. It's part of a lot of our kind of special occasions I make it. So yeah, you're right. What are some of the other kind of benefits you feel like you bring back from traveling?
I definitely would say traveling has really enabled me to be more culturally aware. I feel like as a child, just not being very culturally aware either. I thought the way that Canadians did things was kind of the norm across the spectrum, but having the opportunity to go to Europe this summer and going to over 4 countries has really opened my eyes to not be so close-minded, to appreciate our differences. And so now in my co-op, I feel that I'm able to kind of apply an international scope to the work I'm doing. And I feel like just having new experiences provides more enriching work in your professional field, whatever it may be.
The other thing we said just off tape before we started is you see some kind of connection between travel and the workplace. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, in my opinion, Canada is has a very diverse population, and obviously that reflects in the workplace. As someone who grew up in a place that didn't really have much diversity, I would say that traveling has enabled me to immerse myself in cultures that are very diverse. So working in Canada in my co-op positions with very diverse teams comprised of many different countries, I feel that my eyes are more open to cultural differences and being more culturally aware in modes of communication with respective coworkers has been really interesting. Learning how some people are more formal in the work compared to informality being promoted in work is very interesting as well, and has really opened my eyes to Western versus Eastern ways of working. So that's been interesting to kind of see firsthand in my work.
Diversity is taking on a huge piece of a lot of the work puzzles across Canada and across the world. We have a huge diversity initiative in our firm, which has been great, and we're all learning a lot. I think it's a really great thought that when you, especially if you grew up in a place without much diversity, that you start to experience different things. I really think too that, when it comes to men and women, when it comes to people from different cultures, when it comes to people from different religions and different things like that, different people bring these perspectives. Mm-hmm. And when you get a piece of all the different perspectives, you end up with a better product.
For sure.
You end up with a better result. So I think it's worth it. I think it's a good thing. And so I'm all for it. Okay, well, this has been fantastic. We're toward the end. What I love is we've had the Sammy travel series, Elise travel series, and now in the upcoming year, we'll do a little bit of the Isabelle travel series as well and learn a bit about some of the places you saw and what you learned there. Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of social wellness, and we welcome back Chef Kay Miller to talk about food and social responsibility. Hello again, Chef Kay.
Thanks for having me again.
As we noted last time, I met Kay Miller at a Feast for the Senses event at the Kitchener-Waterloo Art Gallery, and she works as a local activist in Guelph, Ontario. She was a founding member of the Justice for Workers branch in Guelph, and after leaving that organization, Kay started an anti-poverty coalition focusing on societal issues that cause and compound aspects of poverty. Most of her time is spent cooking for and creating initiatives to feed Guelph's most disadvantaged people. Prior to outreach work, she was employed as a chef and menu consultant for some of the busiest places in Guelph. And during the pandemic, she saw the true nature of people, which shook her, and she decided to work within the not-for-profit world because worth cannot be measured by wealth. She sees her skills are better used working within a system for people versus a system driven by profit alone. So, Chef Kay, last time we spoke about respect for the environment and working with nature in terms of the food it offers us. And today I'd like to ask about your thoughts on community work you do with a focus on food, the community, and social responsibility.
Great topic. Obviously, being a chef for my entire adult career, I've always loved food and what it brings to the community, to the family. Food is, I consider it to be a bedrock of the community, which does make it a social responsibility.
Can I just ask on that?
Yes.
I think what you're saying in terms of social responsibility is that we as a society have a responsibility to ensure that people have access to food?
Yes and no. We have a responsibility to make it a priority.
Okay.
And whether that's in an individual basis or a larger governing basis, it needs to be held as a high priority, which I think we're failing on in our current community.
Okay. And then another point, just a quick one about bedrock of society. You know, when you said that, I just thought for a minute, for some reason, how many times sharing a meal with people is such a special thing and so meaningful and really is kind of at the center of so many relationships, family events, friends, social events. So yeah, I really see that point.
It is. Anytime I host social awareness gatherings, I make it a point to have both food and music. Something about those points when people get together and gather and they share a meal together, the connection between those is something you can't foster with anything else. You gain that immediate connection because I think it runs through our ancestral knowledge. It's the one thing that connects us, any culture, anywhere in the world, any age. Food is that connecting piece.
I also think people tend to forget that they're physical beings in the sense that like I did for most of my life, I thought of myself as an intellect, right? Separated from my body. Lately, I've been watching a lot of nature shows and watching the animals. And I mean, all they do is try and find food, right? And it reminds me that, you know what? You know, at the end of the day, it's built into our DNA, I think, that we need to find food and food is important. And it's not surprised then that we're sharing it with other people. That's something that's really getting at the essence of us. Earlier, when we were chatting, you mentioned off tape that we sometimes rely on temporary food relief measures. Can you just tell me, first of all, what does that even mean?
So a temporary food relief measure would be a food bank, and it goes through different names, but there's wellness pantries. So you'll have shipments of produce to people's doors, all either government funded or privately funded. And these are temporary means of solving food insecurity. However, the dangers there is that we're very much relying on them.
Instead of solving the actual problem, where it's kind of like the whole point about putting a Band-Aid on instead of trying to cure the actual wound.
Exactly. And from my lens, from my perspective, as I work directly with food insecurity, if you give individuals money, they do not use the services. These services actually cost exponentially more than what it would cost to, say, have a basic income for folks. And I can prove that. We have every week of the month, we get the checks come in for the folks. And that 1 week period is a ghost town. Nobody's using these services.
Just to clarify, so what you're saying is you're working in a world where you're providing food for people who need food. And I think what you're saying is when they once a month get some kind of check where they get a payment from the government, they don't show up at your place.
Yes.
What you're saying is when they get their check and they have some resources available, they can buy it for themselves and they don't have to be at the places that give them food.
Exactly. The issue with food insecurity is that it's being framed as we are food insecure. We don't have enough food. And that is not the problem. The problem is wage insecurity. The problem is home insecurity. If you take those factors away, people are more than capable of supplying themselves and their family with food. The underlying issue is that their wage does not cover both food and rent and utilities.
Right. And I think the other issue for me too is that if that's the case, if you're trying to stretch your dollars beyond where they can stretch, you also can't afford the right kind of food. You're going to be buying boxed stuff and maybe rice or just really basic stuff, mostly processed, instead of being able to have salad and vegetables and stuff like that.
Yes, 100%. That's another aspect of the problem as well. Because to stretch that dollar, you're buying high starch foods, highly processed foods. They've done several studies where to feed a family of 4, it's significantly cheaper just to go out to McDonald's than it is to the grocery store to make a meal. And that's an issue. It's not for lack of food. It's lack of access to appropriate funding to buy the proper food.
Right. And one of the things you talk about is making food a consideration when we make important decisions and making it a top priority. Can you give us a couple examples on how, you see that? Like what kind of decisions are you talking about and how we might be able to make it a priority?
The best way is to look outside of Canada. There's plenty of examples in European business places where they have like a 2-hour lunch period. This is built into their day. Nobody eats lunch at their desk. They go home, they produce a meal that's built into the system. It's built into their workday, and it's completely taken for granted there. Whereas in our system here, that's very much unheard of. Perhaps in my industry, it's very rare that you get a lunch break at all, let alone a 2-hour lunch break in which you have the time and capacity to make a meal. It's simply just not built into how our society runs.
So we have to be thinking about food and how it's incorporated into our everyday life and prioritizing that.
Yes. Just to expect people to figure it out alone and not give any type of flexibility in their work life, in their commute, in the way society is brought up, in which that they have to work. It's not fair in the individual sense.
And a little piece of that in terms of not knowing and having to figure it out on your own. Like one thing that I was disappointed about was after I spent a lot of time eating unhealthy, I actually saw a nutritionist, and it's just common sense how to eat healthy. But I had to pay, I think at the time it was over $500, and that was I think 2006, to get that information and to be part of a program. And now people join things like Weight Watchers or whatever it is. And, I lament the fact that why didn't I know that from grade school? Why didn't I know that from high school? Why am I not taught about basic food principles and the importance of real food, natural food? And I'm sure people will be out there saying, hey, John, they are doing that. And I hope they are in some places, but that didn't happen with me. And I don't think it happens with a lot of people.
No, and you're right. And that's like probably the fundamental point right there. It should be worked within the school system. And again, my daughter's 7, and she comes home with a lunch bag full of food every day because she's only given a 20-minute period to eat lunch. And again, looking outside of Canada, they don't have that. Lunch is actually viewed as like a school course. They all sit down. The teachers will teach them how to eat properly. They'll teach them how to use utensils. They'll teach them table manners. It's an entire course in and of itself. And we simply just don't have that.
That reminds me, as a complete aside, I got to go to Paris once, which was really lucky. And we went to the Musée d'Orsay, which I love. And we ended up getting there really early in the morning, and we got up to the top level where there's a lot of the really neat paintings. And I was blown away because there was a school full of kids who looked like they were about 10 years old. And they were all sitting on the floor and the teacher was explaining a painting to them. And I thought, wow, I don't think this happens in my neighborhood, but it's so cool that in Paris, children are learning about art, you know, and now you're saying in places they're learning about food and incorporating that as a meaningful part of your day, preparing food and sharing food.
Of course. But again, our society views profit and wealth as the most important terms. So we oftentimes cut programs like art and music and all these very fundamental things that don't gain a profit. So they're viewed as less important.
Right. Because they're not tied to generating revenue.
Yes.
Yeah, I've really come full circle on that kind of thinking myself. Like I used to think, yeah, of course I see why you'd cut the art. And now I'm like, do not cut the art. we need art. So you're saying that we do need people working together in society. Now set aside government for a moment. Can you think of some things a regular person can do to try and be part of the solution if we're trying to be part of a community and be socially responsible?
Just on an individual basis, in general, to take that time out, to let other things slip a little bit that aren't quite as important. And I think teach your children about food and take that time out. And yes, it's going to be hard because you're going to have to let some things fall along the wayside, but just prioritize it because it is so important, especially for youth too, because having that proper nutrition base actually does lead to higher order thinking, and it does affect their future quite a lot. So just spend that extra time and do what you can.
I'm a really big proponent of children not like being told what to do, but they like to follow good examples. If they see and respect people, they like to do what those people do. So I like the idea of taking time to explain these things to them and trying to do it right yourself. And that can change the next generation and the next generation can change society, I suppose.
Yes. No, that's exactly it. Children will learn by direction.
Okay. Well, just before I turn to the last question, was there anything else you wanted? I don't want to cut you off. So is there anything else you want to chat about in terms of community and social responsibility in food?
The only thing I would like to add is our society, we follow rules of economics. And in order to actually address these issues, these problems that we have to acknowledge that the world doesn't follow rules of economics. It doesn't understand economics. Economics is social construction that's very immature in the grand scheme of the world. And to address that and to be more humble and to look and take direction from the earth more. We can't push things as much. We can't exploit and extract to no end. There is a point that we need to step back and be within the processes of life, not fighting them.
So we have to recalibrate.
And that's correct. And the only way to do that is efficacy and creating new programs.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, we're toward the end of the show again, and you've kind of gone through the mini wellness check-in before. So I'm going to ask you again how you're doing today. And so the check-in question is, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing that you could do to foster wellness in that area?
One area of wellness that I would really like to work better on is my meditation and yoga and just grounding myself. I find that's very important, especially with the work I do and being assaulted with all these horrible, huge problems of the world on a daily basis. To be able just to separate yourself and ground yourself is very important. And it's something I continually need to work on because I do let it slip.
It's amazing that you can meditate because that's a challenging thing to do. And
it is.
I've gotten into yoga later in my life, but I love it too. And one thing that really amazed me about yoga is that I always expected I'd go there and I'd be like, oh no, like I'm not flexible. I'm going to be so embarrassed. But it's such a welcoming place where they always just say, do what you can, just move the way you can move. Don't worry about it. And so it's a very relaxing and welcoming environment. So I hope you get a chance to do those things.
Thank you. I am working on it.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. This week, I've been taking some interesting shots on goals that I haven't before. And the biggest one is I'm starting to look for agent representation. Not because I think I could fill a stadium here and now. That's not at all where I'm aiming. At least not yet. I know at this point, it's more about the local scene. I've been having a really difficult time breaking into it, even since moving here a couple years ago. Granted, moving into the middle of a new city during the middle of a pandemic where everything is closed, I guess it's to be expected that things aren't going to be opening and hiring for live music right away. But now that it's been a couple years and things are sort of swinging back to the live music normal front, I've still been having a difficult time breaking in. Not for lack of trying. I've been met with lots of radio silence, both with in-person and email outreach trying to land gigs. And it's kind of frustrating. But rather than letting that dig me down into a hole, I've been trying to work the problem by reaching out for agent representation. So, on the recommendation of the lawyer who did my contracts, I reached out to this agent. Her name's Jenny. And basically said, hey, here's a list of all the stuff I'm doing. Here's some of the stuff I have done. Here's what I can do. And here's what I'm trying to do. And basically, what would it look like if you and I worked together on landing me some more gig opportunities? And after a couple days, she got back in touch and I was so excited. But unfortunately, she just doesn't have the time to take me on. So, I thanked her for her time and her response and basically just said, is there anybody else that you can point me to here? Like, who else would you recommend? So I'm still waiting to hear back on that. And I'm trying not to get discouraged. I think that I'm taking steps in the right direction here. We'll see what happens. Who knows? Maybe I'll get connected with someone that just clicks and the ball will start rolling more in the direction I want it to. I'm also starting to approach my 30th birthday, and it's not scary. I'm not worried about it, but it is kind of reframing how I look at how I'm spending my time and energy and where I want to be spending more of my time and energy going forward. And, after a little soul searching and some serious thought, stuff like the live gigs, agent representation, the studio contracts, that area of music, I find it fulfilling in a different way than teaching music. And while teaching can be really great, I don't think it's something I want to be doing forever. So I'm starting to look at the avenues where I can trade some of that out and trade some of it up. I'll keep you in the loop on that. Wish me luck, and who knows, maybe something's going to land. For now, that's all I've got. Thanks very much for listening. Have a fabulous rest of your week. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
Spring is in the air. We're into spring. The days of frost on the windshields are almost at an end.
Almost.
So a couple weeks ago, we put air in the bike tires, a little bit of oil on the chain, and Sheila and our son Alex are both biking to work regularly.
Yeah, it's so nice. And it's actually doesn't take that much longer to bike to work than it would to drive to work. So I'm really appreciating that it's, it doesn't take that much longer, but it is so wonderful to bike to work. It's nice to wake up. It gets you moving and the air is so crisp in the morning. It's just wonderful. I feel alive.
I have to start. I will be doing that as well. So your bike ride's only about 3 kilometers, so I can see why it's not that much longer, but still Alex is more like, I think, 7 kilometers. And he goes on one of the local trails and he finds it great. He could do it faster if he went straight up the busy streets, but he likes being on the trail. But I'm guessing he said that doesn't take him much longer either, because normally he has to leave where he works and walk for about 5 minutes or more to get to the parking lot, get to his car. So by the time he would have got to his car, he's already a good amount home.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's the same. It takes me, on average, I would say 10 minutes to drive to work,
Right.
depending on how many lights I get red, but that's about average.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess about 15 minutes to bike.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Like for me, it takes about 10 minutes to bike and it takes maybe 8 minutes to drive. So it's really, really quick because you get in the car, you get the lights, you get out of the car. It's a whole thing. Whereas the biking, I can literally bike right into my work. Same as you. You can bike right into the parking lot and park, and Alex can park his bike right at work too. It's really fun.
Mine is crazy because I use my fob to open the underground parking, and then we go in and there's a room for bikes.
Yeah,
it's
that
so
is
cool.
really cool. Yeah.
And the thing I like too is I have 2 or 3 different routes. So I can just go straight up a street and it's not that busy.
Mm-hmm.
So I can ride on the streets and it's not that busy, but it's still just regular street life. But there's another way where I can take some back roads for a lot of the time. And I like that because I just kind of coast along and you hear the birds singing or whatever. And then there's another one which is longer and I can take a bike path, which is scenic as well. I do that less. What I really like is the fact that you just start the day. Like for me, it's kind of a nature type thing. You just start moving your legs. You get that energy flowing. And I don't go fast.
No, me either.
I just take it easy to get into work, but I definitely feel a bit energized.
Yeah, I feel my heart beating. I have the same thing that there's a direct route that I can go, but I thought that the direct route is faster. But today I took the indirect route that I thought was indirect, and it took me exactly the same amount of time.
No way.
Yeah. So I was really happy about that because it's a much nicer drive because it's not a busier street. So I'm going to do that from now on.
It's a really good trade-off. Not everything has to be the fastest.
No, exactly.
I love trading off kind of birds chirping, nice scenery, even if it costs me a few minutes. So it's really, and right now at my work, we're just starting this contest where as many people as we can get going for our green team.
Okay.
We're trying to get people to bike, to walk, to take public transport, to start to reduce carbon emissions.
Oh, great.
And now that that's going, I'm going to try and do my part. And I don't remember the stats, but they just recently sent out a note saying how many trips it takes to burn this, massive amount of carbon. And it's surprising how even this little thing that we all do can make a big difference.
Yes, for sure. And you're not spending money on gas, so you're saving money. And it's I have a basket, so I really like that too, because I stopped at the grocery store today and got milk, which is nice on my way home from biking.
Yeah, you definitely have that European baskety look going. It looks pretty cool. You're sitting straight up.
Yeah.
The main thing is this is move that body. This is the segment. It's an easy way to move that body. It's a good way to move that body. It's good for you. It's good for the environment. It's a lot of fun. And it's one of the great things right now about spring. It seemed even more exciting because it's like, finally, we're breaking free.
Exactly.
And, hey, maybe even pretty soon we can open the pool up and everything.
Wow.
There's a thought. Popped up while running.
I saw a meme and it's amazing what it says. And I keep thinking about it a lot. I keep mentioning it to people when I'm talking to them. I'm not sure if it's actually from a Star Trek episode. I do like Star Trek-ish. I don't dislike it. But I'm not also somebody who knows everything about it. So the meme is there's an episode where Spock, the older one, is talking to his younger self. They ended up meeting each other in one of their, I think it was a movie, not sure. Anyway, here's what the quote is. So here's the older guy. He says, "When people speak of traveling to the past, they worry about radically changing the present by doing something small. But barely anyone in the present thinks they can radically change the future by doing something small." And young Spot says, "Dude." Okay, so how amazing is that? Because how many times do we think to ourselves, oh, what's the point? What's the point of me doing this little thing, like joining this service group and helping a few people? What's the point of me making changes in my own house to help the environment? What's the point of me doing nice things in my little space? Don't we all have to do this huge thing in order to change the future? And it really is something we get stuck on. And yet, yeah, you're right. Like we see all these science fiction movies and stuff, and everyone's like, oh no, like don't go back. Don't do one little thing because one little thing and everyone will disappear in the future. And I just love this quote, and it just applies to so many things that I'm talking to people these days. So yeah, you know what? Think about that. You can do something positive. You can do something little and positive, and it might have a big change on the future. But guess what? Even if it only has a small change in the present, it's still worth it. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Now, I'm not as good as Sheila at this, but one of the things that we can do, that John and Sheila show can do, is when we screw up, we can screw up with confidence.
Yes, I'm really good at that. Screwing up with confidence.
The problem with you is you don't actually think you're screwing up.
No, I don't think I'm screwing up. I'm incredibly confident in what I'm doing. So I'm like doing it. And then I might realize that it might be a little wrong or something, but I just keep going with it because it's like, wow, we're in it now. Just be confident. And I think that's 100% true.
Well, it's definitely true about you.
Be confident and everyone will believe you or trust you.
Well, I know. Actually, now that I think of it too, I remember the first. So a moot is a fake court appearance or a practice court appearance. So there's someone who's acting as a judge. Mm-hmm. And usually it's students. One student will argue one side and one will argue the other.
Right.
And I remember the very first time I did that in law school in first year. It was a terrible experience. But I learned that lesson because I studied a lot. Like I actually read the law and I knew the law. And
wow, that surprises me.
Whatever the case was about, I actually had this argument set up based on the law, right?
Right, the logic and the law.
And I can't remember who I was against, but they were one of these people that was really good at talking, but not so good at studying, right? And so we start and I make my argument and the other person starts and they just talk a bunch of hooey. It's like completely wrong. But with amazing confidence.
That is amazing, yes.
And I think it was like a draw. Like because
oh, really? Because they were so good at it.
They were so good. And I'm like, man, I better be careful in this court system because people who can screw up with confidence can do well.
Yeah, you just have to be incredibly confident. So what happened with us is we went to see Fosse and we did have VIP tickets. It said VIP on our ticket.
Well, let me just give a bit of context. So I worked at a big Bay Street law firm. So in Toronto, that's like one of the big law firms.
Right.
And almost any time we got tickets for an event, it was VIP.
Okay.
And for some reason.
Maybe because you guys were sponsors or something. So if you're sponsors, you're given some tickets. So these were VIP tickets.
Well,
who knows?
It just was like weird. That's what I was used to. Like it was just for whatever reason. And I was young and didn't really know much.
So here we are going to Fosse, John and I.
We go to Fosse at this theater and our seats were right beside this door that said something like VIP.
Right. So visualize the theater, the back doors is where you come in and we go down and we're really close, pretty close to the front, like, 10 seats in and you can veer out. I had to go to the bathroom and you can veer out to the right or the left. And we were close to the right. So I saw those doors and I was like, let's go out these doors to the right because that'll be quicker. So we go out these doors to the right and kind of walk and there's a VIP lounge. And I'm like, we're VIPs. And I just walk in.
Right.
Like,
and I thought we were probably supposed to be there.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like there was something said VIP, but it wasn't the right VIP. And by the way, this was intermission.
Yes.
Right. So there was this fancy party and we go in and we each get this gift bag.
They like walk in and they're like, oh, here's a gift bag. We're like, thanks. And then, I had to go to the bathroom. So we just walked in. I went to the bathroom and then, would you like a drink? Do you want this? There's all this free stuff.
And so we're doing all that. And then eventually someone kind of walks up to us, trying not to make any kind of scene and says, do you guys belong here?
Now, I wonder why they did that. Like,
I don't know, but this is when we screwed up with confidence.
Yeah.
You're like, yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Yes, we're supposed to be there. Now, I'm thinking that maybe it was a certain group of VIP, right? And they didn't recognize us as part of this, and we're like, oh, yes. And then we kind of left quick because we were thinking maybe we don't. But I didn't want to lose my little grab bag stuff because there was a Fosse shirt in there.
Yeah, like I felt like one of these spies, on the TV shows or movies where they just kind of walk in, they grab a ticket, they walk in, they pretend they belong there.
They belong there.
We just did that. We did our we belong here thing, and then we put our tails between our legs, took a bigger hold on our gift bags, and slid back to our seats.
And it was so great. I wore that Fosse shirt for a really long time at the dance studio. It reminded me of that experience.
You got a t-shirt?
Yeah, in the bag. There was a t-shirt. Yeah. And I love the show. Oh my gosh. It was so amazing.
So screw up with confidence, people. Screw up with confidence. Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It's sign-off time, but it's a bit of a different one tonight because it's about 7 hours before we release the episode, and Sheila and I have been so busy, we haven't been able to connect with anyone. Mm-hmm. The wedding was on Saturday. Our son Jeremy got married. Fantastic. You'll hear more about that from Sheila. Sunday, Sheila worked Sunday night, and I was exhausted. Both of us were exhausted. So we were playing catch up.
Yes.
And tonight, Monday, we had to drive about 2 hours and 15 minutes to go to a visitation for my aunt, amazing woman who unfortunately passed away. So it's just Sheila and I tonight for a sign off.
Hi, John.
Hello, Sheila.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Why don't we start with you?
Okay, well, we had a busy week, but it was amazing considering all the rain that we've had here in Kitchener-Waterloo and basically Southern Ontario. Saturday was absolutely gorgeous. The whole day, not a drop, beautiful, and the wedding just went off without a hitch. Everyone had a wonderful time, and it was just fabulous. I can't say enough things about it. I was very impressed with the few things I didn't know. Both our sons did such a wonderful speech, better than ours, actually, I think.
I know. That was crazy. I'm not very happy with them.
I know.
I kind of toned mine down a bit, and then both of theirs was over the top, so mine kind of looked flat.
Oh, yours was great. It was fine. It was great.
No, you're right. Everything was fantastic.
Everything was fantastic. A wedding is always a long day, right? Because you're setting everything up and then doing your hair and your makeup, and it's a long day. And then on Sunday, you have to take down everything and bring everything back where you got it. And I had to work. So here we are Monday working again and then driving and busy. But I would like to wish Nancy Kinsley, who is the mother of the bride, it's her birthday today. So happy birthday to you. I hope you have a fabulous birthday week, because for me, birthdays are for the whole week. And I hope everyone enjoys the sun. It's going to be a wonderful week with the sun shining and it's getting warmer out. So I hope you all get to go out there and move your bodies a little bit and enjoy that. I did want to mention last week, I didn't get to say that I went to a wonderful high school musical. It was actually a high school play musical. That was High School Musical. And it was my sister's show. And I did want to give her a shout out because I thought it was absolutely fabulous. So hopefully she's listening as well. I really enjoyed that last week. So hopefully I get to do a little more fun things now that the wedding's over. Do you have anything last to say, John?
I have a couple quick things to go over. First of all, on this week's episode, we talked about getting back on our bikes for biking to work. And I said it's something I would have to do. And I did it. Yes. I started biking to work last week and I've biked to work 3 times now. It's been amazing. I'm just loving it.
Excellent.
Plus, as a quick thing, I've signed up for this one program through Sustainable Waterloo Region. They have something called Travel Wise. And so I just plug in when I do one of these rides, and it's really cool because it shows me how much money I saved, how many calories I burned, how much CO2 I stopped from putting into the air. Just liking that a lot.
That is really cool.
And a quick note, this is coming out on May 9th and by May 14th. So there's only a really quick 5-day window, but I'm running the Sporting Life 10K on Sunday. It's a great cause. It's to raise money for Campfire Circle, which is a camp that brings much needed joy to kids and families affected by childhood cancer or serious illness. It gives kids a great chance to have some fun. So if you want to sponsor me and you know how to use Instagram, then go to Instagram to either my own page, which is John G. Webb, or to let's.be.well.together. And if you click on the profile, there's a link there. When you click the link, you'll see a button to sponsor me. So if you feel like doing that, that'd be fantastic. Anyway, it's been a really busy weekend. We're both exhausted. We have to get up early tomorrow. We are going to go to sleep. So that's it for tonight.
Have a great week, everyone. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.